In our 2000 startup world, we are seeing portable MRI solutions where a traditional MRI will be the size of a room. Now it's about probably 2/3 height of me.
Wow. What is Nvidia like as a company in terms of the culture and the organization?
Nvidia is a fantastic company that has the culture of speed of light. And that means that we move really fast, test our hypothesis, execute, and learn as we go. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Silicon Valley culture of everyone thinking just run fast and break faster and doesn't care about quality. We do hold ourselves to the highest accountability in terms of solving the right problem, solving unique challenges that NVIDIA is able to solve for our customer base. And that answered the first question, NVIDIA's culture. What was the second question?
In terms of the culture and the organization.
And the organization. Organization is a very interesting one because NVIDIA, even though we have 26,000 some people and a a publicly traded company, we actually are a very, very flat organization where there are only a few layers from the very junior person all the way up to our CEO. And the reason why we decided to do that is because we want to ensure mission is the boss and remove all hierarchy that is being in the way of how we can potentially innovate for the industry. So that's the main reason. And that comes with its unique opportunity and challenges for sure. The unique opportunity is that, hey, if you don't like your project that you're currently working on the team, you can just raise your hand and say, I want to volunteer for another mission. And we are all treated as volunteers and to come work for a company that we all love deeply to build together. And yeah, I think it's a very fantastic one to be in. And that's why I've been here for such a long time, because a lot of, I would say, millennial generations are changing jobs every other year or something like that. But it's interesting to be in a company with so many brilliant minds around and building some of the most cutting edge technology and changing the industry literally every single day.
For sure. Yeah, that statistic also applies to Gen Z. I think, Gen Z are the most likely to change their job every 10 to 12 months. They'll want to work in different fields. And speaking of different fields, how does NVIDIA enter different fields like self-driving cars, for instance, differently than other companies?
NVIDIA, if from the core perspective, we started as a chip company. And as a chip company, it means that we were, really established in the gaming business because a lot of gamers love to buy one GPU and put it into their workstations and be able to experience very interactive games in real time. Similar technology, the parallel processing, is actually made available for training AI and inferencing AI in the long run. And what we realize is that such technology has enabled a lot of brilliant minds of the world to solve problems that could be essentially augmented or help people become more efficient, either at identifying things, classifying things, segmenting things. It's a universal problem that can be applied for all industries. So when we enter an industry, it's which we are now in almost all industries, like oil and gas, industrial, self-driving car, healthcare, fintech, retail, you name it. Because honestly, every single one of them has those problems, identifying certain things, classifying them and segment them as an example. And AI has opportunities to help speed up how human interact with tasks. So for that, in that case, we pick unique problems to solve and enter with a very intentional and mindful way of solving a problem. Or sometimes, honestly, we're building an industry, a segment of the industry that no one has even thought of. And we will build it, and then people potentially could come. So it's a very interesting approach. Like, for example, at NVIDIA healthcare side, right? We healthcare is really big. a lot of people think healthcare is like, oh, it's the ring that I'm wearing on my finger that can track my sleep. It's the wearables that I'm tracking my breathing and heartbeats and things. And for us, it's actually, we have to identify the unique problems in that space. And for us, we realize that AI can significantly help speed up imaging and instruments, drug discovery, and genomics. And therefore, we prioritize our time building an application framework called Clara to help solve problems that are in those four segments and not specifically in maybe the consumer day-to-day type of a healthcare application. So I think we take a similar approach, identifying very challenging problems that Nvidia is very uniquely capable of solving, and figure out the market size, and then we go in there accordingly.
Sure. And you're at a very interesting section as well in terms of AI and healthcare yourself. You see over 2,000 AI healthcare startups, if that's correct?
Yes.
So, what are the most interesting startups in the AI healthcare or at the AI healthcare intersection?
Lots actually. And in our 2000 startup world, we are seeing portable MRI solutions like Hyperfines of the world, where a traditional MRI will be the size of a room. Now it's about probably two-thirds height of me and
Wow.
five-fourth to like maybe two of me stacked together, like this mini portable MRI systems that can be wheeled in an ambulance truck, and then where the young patients, like a baby, can even have their brain scanned if needed with their comfort of their parents next to it. So I think in instrument side, we're seeing more and more portable solutions coming in. And in the imaging side, we're seeing a lot of AI for radiology, pathology solutions coming in. And in that space, the part that hasn't been fully disrupted yet, where I start seeing some people going in, is actually the sort of the end-to-end workflow of
Yeah,
after you develop the radiology solution, and you really want to disrupt that end to end for a hospital, how they deploy and work with it
sure.
is a much, much bigger problem. But I do see a lot of like 400 some AI imaging companies in the radiology space. And of course, the drug discovery and genomic space is just
Mhm.
blowing up, because that space where you imagine humans' DNA, right? ATCG, when we look at those are numbers to computers. And when we leverage and combine science and engineering, we are very quickly able to get to insights a lot faster, to a point the very first AI identified drug candidates is going through phase 2 clinical trial now. So that is like revolutionary in this space. And that's also where, ChatGPT is actually playing, or similar technology is playing a role in the healthcare space.
Well, I mean, you created the perfect segue. So, what does ChatGPT and that innovation mean for AI and healthcare?
Yeah, sure. ChatGPT for a lot of us is a browser, and then you ask a lot of questions, prompt tune it, and then you get answers, right? And in fact, I use it every single day to improve my productivity for my day-to-day job. And so I like it a lot. So for those of you who have already tried it, you will understand the use case very well when I describe it. In the healthcare space, you're start seeing a lot of startups coming in to help the hospital summarize patient notes, for example, or be able to get certain type of data and then analyze it accordingly, right? They may not be using ChatGPT itself, maybe a variation of it because of patient data sensitivity, etc. But the technology or the similar look and feel and use case started to bubbling up in the startup community. Another one is that in the genomics and drug discovery space, imagine if we have this technology at the very beginning of COVID-19, right? We had COVID-19, all of us are familiar with that, and it went through rounds of, mutation of the virus, and we went through different types of vaccine, right? And if at the very beginning, we can somehow maybe test out using a generative approach to generate different types of mutation of a disease and then have human look at it to say, hey, does this make sense or not? That
Mm.
is revolutionary, because it just kind of like, for us, we are looking at the poems and then we're like, oh wow, ChatGPTs can write poems now. And we can look at it and say, this makes no sense and this makes sense. It's the same in the protein space as well. You can generate protein, you can generate virus that are beyond our human imagination. And some of them may not make any scientific sense, but some other ones may very much change how we think about making drugs and changing the space in medicine.
Well, you said previously that you've been in Nvidia and in this space for quite a while. So, how has the field of AI healthcare changed as you've been a part of it?
It's very interesting. That's a good question, because we've been in the imaging space the longest. Okay, so we have Nvidia GPUs
Mhm.
inside these big instruments. A lot of images get changed and get generated, and then we started applying AI. I say that like a lot of the startups started applying it like more than a dozen years ago.
Mm,
Um, very early on, some of them when they start using AI, FDA was not there. They don't know how to approve such a thing, and some of them were like, okay, if we were to use this, there was a huge fear of replacing healthcare professional workers like radiologists, etc. Um, and that at the very beginning, there were a lot of kind of like when people first gone through, the Industrial Revolution, like a lot of the manual job seems to be um, automated, and that fear
mhm,
was definitely there. But after we went to, I'm just going to use this imaging as one specific example. We went to RSNA, which is one of the largest radiology conference, right? The difference between a year or two is huge in that
mhm.
conference. The prior year, where we will hear something like radiologist is afraid of AI, to immediately the positioning change. It's the radiologists that are not going to use AI will be the one that's going to be replaced, right?
Mm,
And now we are seeing the same thing, right? ChatGPT, it is going to change the way that we work on a day-to-day basis. It's just like when you first discover Google. Before,
right.
you may be asking your parents, why is the sky blue? Now you ask Google, why is the sky blue? And then next, will that be ChatGPT? It's still
Mm,
to be determined, but think about how things may change
right.
with this new way of working, right? And we definitely see that change in the AI in healthcare space. There are still people that are reluctant of using AI for many various different reasons, right? Sometimes it's because it's in rare disease, they don't have enough data. If you don't have
Mm,
data, it's very hard to work with a technology like AI. Some other ones, it may be um, they absolutely need the human touch, for example, which, by the way, I do think no matter what technology is automated or augmented with AI, still need that human in the loop.
mm,
And human value still has lots to add in this entire workflow. So, yeah, we are just seeing um, a bigger community coming together to help um, increase the productivity of professional workers. And going back to this COVID example, this whole telemedicine,
mhm.
like telehealth use case blew up during COVID, right? And prior to that, a lot of people were like, no, everyone's still going to come to the doctor and come to the office and all that. But after COVID, we're like, we can work virtually and remotely. So now there's actually a lot more AI solution even helping with these telehealth solution,
Right.
because they now naturally can say that, wow, if I want to run a company of helping 10 million patients with their mental health problem, how do I deploy a empathetic large language model bots that is
Right.
helping address um, uh, some of the tedious questions, like maybe um, asking how what your name is and the address and all those things, or maybe finding commonly known questions that there is not a lot of discrepancy between the professional doctors, because the harder part is that like we still very much need the doctors of the world to eventually give us an opinion about what what are some of the diagnoses supposed to be, how are some of the diseases are supposed to be treated.
Mhm. I just want to take a tangent because we're at the intersection of AI and healthcare. And obviously, when you're talking about artificial intelligence, you have to think about the ethics of it. That's it's an emerging question. And so, do you have any thoughts or opinions about ethics when it comes to AI healthcare?
Ethics is a huge topic in AI healthcare. There's definitely a lot of technology companies that have that at the forefront in mind. Like, for example, how do you handle data? How do you de-identify the data?
Sure.
How do you make sure patient privacy is in place? And in fact, that was a huge challenge and problem in the space that provided opportunities for generative AI because some original data can actually not be leveraged for commercial purposes, and or some of them could only be leveraged for research purposes after a certain format is developed. But
Mhm.
using generative AI synthetic data could be a way of preserving patient privacy and still continue to provide the right robust training data set to help train an AI model. So I think the ethics is definitely very high, and that means a lot of things to a lot of people. And is how do you use the data? How do you train the model? Do you have a diverse work group to
Mhm.
be able to provide the expert opinions on things? And when you do deploy it, what does it mean? How do you make sure you meet the regulatory approval? When now we have the new cybersecurity requirement coming through in the medical space. That means like a startup, when they originally have to submit for FDA, like maybe a 10-page document for on the cybersecurity side, they now have to submit it like 400 to 700 pages of document to FDA
Wow.
just on
Wow.
cybersecurity to ensure that whenever they upload a gigabyte of data, it's actually safe. So I think this ethical problem is a huge one
Mm.
in the market, and there's lots to be impacted there.
For sure. And you talked about in the past, as you were seeing the AI healthcare intersection, I guess, mature, 1 year to the next, it grew and advanced by leaps and bounds. So, what do you think about the future of the intersection? Can you think of, or can you speak on how you think it'll advance, if you can pinpoint certain ways it'll advance?
Yeah. Let me separate it into sections of the healthcare because each one of them I think is going to be disrupted differently.
Sure.
In the future, in imaging, the ones that have extensive background of knowing workflow optimization end to end and have a really good partnership with hospitals plus the right data, the ground truth data will be changing the space a lot. And in the future, the space will definitely be augmented with a lot of AIs in the market. And even now, lots of AI solutions have already been deployed across like hundreds of hospitals globally. So it's going to get better and easier, and it's going to become a second nature for them. In the instrument space, we will start seeing smaller companies can leverage bigger companies who may be building general purpose computing to avoid too much of the upfront cost and build something that is innovative and small form factor, portable to solve many use cases that we were not able to do. Because even just there's this one company called Alpenglow Bioscience. They're super cool. Um, Originally, when you look at let's say like a pathology data, it's usually 2D, right?
Mhm.
But the 3D pathology, or maybe even in the future, like 3D spatial biology and all of that, is
Mm.
the first time ever that we can actually view 3D view of these images and make better decisions for people. So in the instrument side, it's going to become a lot smaller. The companies that are still, spending millions on the infrastructure side will likely be disrupted one way or the other. Um, let's see, the genomic space
Mm.
is very interesting because having your gene being sequenced it used to cost thousands of dollars and long time, like years, right? But now it's like a couple of days and $100, and sometimes even just like a few hours. Even there was like a world record that was broken last year. I think it was 4 hours to be able to sequence that. And that was, we are doing it with Stanford and a couple others. So if you guys look at the publication, you will know. With the cost effectiveness and generally available gene data, that is essentially a map of who we are, right, will advance science tremendously. So that space is to be disrupted with a lot more companies coming to build, faster sequencers, so they can have a lot more data coming out, and then a lot more AI will be applied to tertiary analysis in that space to be able to see things a lot clearer and make decisions a lot faster. And that space is coming. It's happening this last year or two, but more is going to come because now the readily available data, and imagine how much data we all each have, right? So that's another thing. In the drug discovery space, oh, this is going to be disrupted the fastest, I think, because before it's like people would spend billions of dollars in 10 years to get one drug to market. And it's hard because the entire pipeline, it's like from early discovery to preclinical to clinical to commercial. This is a long process. But if you can help with this early discovery to find a drug candidate, to find the next target, to find the right protein to bind, it will change the game. We never thought AI will find a drug and go to market, but it happened. It happened early last year was the first hint of it, and early this year, we saw the breakthrough. So large pharmas are paying attention to this space where AI is really coming in to help make a difference in solving this very costly problem in the space. On top of that, it's not just the drug discovery part of it, but doing this clinical trial is also a very expensive part, right? For example, if you and I were both selected to go through a clinical trial for one of the drugs, and we both likely need to be healthy, but we may be carrying a somewhat of a hidden variant or something, a gene or something that they wanted to test if this drug is going to work for us. Imagine on the other end, that person or that organization is trying to figure out, should they be targeting you or me if they were to pay us $500 to go through this clinical trial? How can they decide which patient potentially to recruit for this clinical trial is a huge problem that has not been fully solved over the years, given that, the siloed and diverse group of data that they have to go collect before determine whether you or me is going to be the most incentivized to go through a clinical trial like that. So even in that space, you will see a lot more AI going in to help out with organizing, viewing, classifying, and generally spitting out data and the reports for people to make decisions.
Yeah, no, I'm very jealous of your work and everything because I really think that the AI healthcare, I mean, just think about the way that social media algorithms all understand us. Like if we think of like Tristan Harris's example of like they create profiles of us and they just understand us implicitly. Imagine having that power over our health. There's already these companies like Inside Tracker that offer us, they're sequencing our genes and then also giving us that data for us to work with, and they're commercializing that, and just giving that to a wider set of the population would be tremendous and would increase our lifespan significantly. So I guess that wraps up the AI healthcare part, but we also have to talk about startups because you oversee 2,000 of them. We can start with, what is the Inception program?
Okay, sure. Inception program is a virtual free program we now have 13,000 startups in the program, and we offer them a lot of great benefits, like providing them AI technical support. You don't have to be just doing AI. You can do like simulation and, like gaming and AR, VR. We have a space for you too. And we also offer a lot of preferred pricing, if you will. Not that you are obligated to pay for any of it, but hey, GPU is in high demand. If you couldn't get your hands on a GPU, we have great discounts for those who do find value and need to purchase a few, but not just GPUs, but also the software layer too. Some of the very smart startups that came through us would look at everything that we offer, handpick a few things, and then build that into a company. And I have seen definitely quite a lot of those too. And then we also help them with VC Alliance. VC Alliance is our program where we have a lot of external VC that can come in and provide funding for the startups. We have about 400 VCs in our group. Last but not least is our go-to-market support, where we help with either marketing or from the technical side. Let's say instead of one video stream of deploying in the hospital of detecting patient movement, how do you deploy 300 of them at once, right? Solutions like that. And also help them with mapping them with the right end customers. If you are trying to sell into pharma, trying to sell into hospitals, we play a role in that too. So essentially on a high level is AI technical support, preferred pricing, VC connection, and go-to-market. And that's kind of some of the great benefits that we offer. And we have a vibrant community. And sometimes we'll host exclusive events for a like-minded group of people, meaning that they're solving the interesting problem in the same segment to get connected so they can actually foster partnership and innovation together.
That's fantastic. It's great that Nvidia is doing that. And then specifically in terms of, startups need funding and everything. So what do investors look for during an economic downturn?
A lot more of them are conservative in terms of now they will much prefer if you are working on something that has paying customers. Before they'll be like, okay, spend some time to, figure out a problem and identify a solution and test it out. And they're invested in early on companies quite a lot. So I think since some of those recent news that you saw in the media, there's definitely a shift in mindset in that. I will have to say, like, a lot of VCs look for things differently. Some of them have definitely their main theme-based companies, right? Some other ones focus on the ones that will disrupt the entire industry, or other ones is more looking for financial returns, meaning that like each product you sell can help the VCs make money. And some other of them perhaps sometimes even play a role of merger and acquisition, right? They definitely have that within some of these VC arms as well. For us from the healthcare side, it's been interesting because even during the economic downturn, when I see many other industries, their funding went down, we stayed relatively consistent. They were still like down in like a lot of the digital health space, but we actually, more surprisingly, we saw like AI for genomics space or drug discovery space either went up a little bit or 2x the investment into that.
Wow.
So there are pockets even during economic downturn that can actually help us help the investors identify where the next area to invest in. So I wouldn't be too discouraged with the economic downturn. Find the right problem, and if it so happened to be in a niche that where VC is still very optimistic about, and I think you will have some luck.
What advice do you have for people, looking to enter the startup arena, either in an economic downturn or just in general?
Building a startup is hard. I built quite a couple in my life too, and it's a real commitment. I think you gotta love it, and from the perspective that you need to like the grind and love the ups and downs. Every single day is completely different. In the morning, you may be in cloud nine, and then at night you'll be like, I don't think I can put food on the table like tomorrow. So that sort of huge thing, a huge emotional swing is not for everyone. But if you are looking to get into a startup during economic downturn, identify the problem first. So figure out, is that a problem that is just having a Tylenol is going to be okay? Or God, you really need morphine right now. And if it's something that it's a huge pain point that people will be willing to pay, I think that could be a good solution. And honestly, sometimes using ChatGPT was like, it was like that for me. Originally, I didn't realize that it was solving my problem because I didn't
Mhm.
feel like I had a problem. But what you realize is that everyone needs to be more productive. And as soon as I got my hands on it and I became more productive, I was like, I have to pay for this, because it's the new way of working. Being part of the evolution is going to be very, very important. It's not just ChatGPT, right? There's like a lot of many other startups that are in this space. Nvidia, we have our own solution too, and we're working with OpenAI and Microsoft very closely. They're a very good partner of ours. Like at Nvidia GTC last week, you may have heard some of the announcements that we made in the AI Foundation category, like Nemo LLM service kind of does similar things, but even better for enterprise grade text related solutions. And BioNemo is for generative AI for biology and chemistry, and Picasso is like image to text, right? Some of the main use cases is like media and entertainment, but honestly, every single segment will have like text and images that you can apply those solutions in. And what we realize is that increasing people's productivity is a area of potential opportunity. So I think when you're looking into going into a startup and building a startup, not just think that, oh wow, generative AI is the most amazing technology, so let me just apply this technology to something. But instead, look around and see what are the problems that we can solve and how is the existing ecosystem already doing it. Ask the question of why hasn't this been disrupted yet?
Mm.
And then look around to see, do we already have existing solutions like that to offer it? If not, do I need to build it or do I partner? And really figure out, is it a new market that you're going in? Is it in big and upcoming market that you could expand, or is it a dying industry that you're going in? And after you answer all of that questions, then dive in and know that it's going to be a fun ride because you learn so much
Sure.
starting a company faster than you ever would in a much bigger company.
And you have like very direct experience because you haven't just started one, you started several. But there's a psychology of starting, of being in a startup and not just being in a startup, but of, being the forefront of that. Can you speak to the psychology of how it changed you and what you learned during those times?
I love your line of questions. Great. I think when I am thrown into an area, I am not scared.
Mm.
um, is the biggest mindset change. And somehow I am fully confident that I will identify a problem and solve it, and I'll be just fine. And with some luck, maybe I'll disrupt the company. With some persistency and some help around me, I will probably do great. I think that mindset change is very interesting the way that you put it. Like for example, if I were to pitch you an idea right now to say, oh, let's go use ChatGPT to write some books.
Mhm.
Um, because ChatGPT is around. I love reading books. Let's go disrupt this market, right? When I start with that idea, I never just keep it to myself. I'll be like, let me tell everyone if I really am passionate about that. Let me go tell everyone, and everyone's going to have their differences in opinion. Someone will be like, oh, I don't know. You're going to have to go print things, and that's like inventory costs. Some other will be like, who's still reading these days? And then some other will be like, oh, what about like making it into games? And I still read too. And all that. So when people ask those questions, especially the ones that are challenging you, I love it.
Mm.
And some people don't like hearing no. And some people don't know how to respond to other people don't agree with your ideas. But when I hear it, I was like, oh, tell me more.
Yeah.
Because that is also a mindset change, right? Because they are there to free advice that they're giving you that you can make your startup potentially better. Um, or even any problems that you're trying to solve, you have a more comprehensive view, right? So it's the same. Like even within NVIDIA, I changed my career path multiple times. And each time I will have to say I went into that industry with zero background knowledge. It was
Mm.
nothing that I learned in college. It was nothing that I learned in my previous role. Were they transferable skills? Yes. But it's the mindset to know that I'm going to do a Wikipedia search. I'm going to ask ChatGPT a couple of questions. I'm going to sit down and read a 500-page textbook on AI for drug discovery and just to learn it all. I think it's that calmness and that mindset that I'm going to be just fine going into an industry is what building a startup do for you, because you just go through so much. And
Sure.
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And we come out on the other end um, much more wiser to solve better problems.
I think one of the philosophies of even being in a startup is even if it fails, you don't like fail and stay static, you fail forward. Like every
Yeah.
startup, there's no failure in it. And it seems like when you were in these startups, you became battle hardened to the point where as soon as you encounter a problem, you have a focus, you have a determination, and you also have a rigor to the way you approach that problem to the point where you're just saying, what is the problem, and then how do I navigate it, instead of being anxious or taking in all of the factors. And that's a really important thing that I think people really need to abstract that into their own lives, because it's not just startups. They can apply that to relationships, to families, obviously to their careers. um, I guess the last question is, what advice, this is the Gen Z Diplomat podcast, so what advice do you have for Gen Z in entering the startup arena, the AI healthcare arena, or specifically Nvidia?
Sounds great. Um, Entering into startup, I think I talked about a lot. Um, find that problem, figure out a solution. Um, AI space is going to change very quickly. By the time maybe you finish schools or trying to figure out where to go next, that space already changed a couple of times. Um, Gen AI is going to be a wave, generative AI, and leveraging AI related solution to be more productive is going to be a new way of working. I will say the Gen Z type that felt really lucky and oh my God, ChatGPT is going to help me write my essay and I don't have to go to school anymore, will probably not be set up for as much success compared to those to be like, okay, this ChatGPT is here. And it's going to change all sorts of way we work. How do I best position myself when I graduate or pick a workplace um, that is still going to be around with such technology around? Think harder, not just benefit from the technology itself, but think about what else may it impact. The way we work will be different, and be part of the evolution, contribute to it, and not just be the consumer of it. I would say, yes, that's one of the advice I have for those who are entering into AI, because if you're thinking about AI, you probably, from a technical perspective, you're probably really good at math, computer science, and a couple other fields, and then coming in, things change pretty quickly. Then can you be part of the solution problem solving side, or are you gonna be one of those you know that ChatGPT is gonna be able to help write all lines of code, and then you don't fundamentally understand how code works and you cannot contribute to bug fixing, etc. So those are all things to consider. um, Not just solely benefit from what's provided, but think deeper in terms of how else you can contribute to the change and help this entire industry move forward. um, so that's advice into AI. The last one about advice going into Nvidia is that it will be very, very important to think about, one is like where your strength is, and then see if Nvidia is a place that could help you thrive. I
Mm.
think Nvidia is a fantastic company that treats everyone like family and offer unique opportunity and to solve some of the toughest challenge. It runs at the speed of light. When I say that, it's not just a mindset, it's we even act like that. It may or may not be for everyone, right? Those that want to be part of this process, you are rolling up your sleeves and being an IC, individual contributor. Regardless if you are a manager or not, you will still need to manage, you will still need to lead, but you still have the skill set to do a individual contributor role. But it's so fun to see an industry that we carve out and people love it and are buying and are we're solving their problem. This is a one of the most innovative company that I've been at, and it's so great to be a part of the process. So if you're considering maybe Nvidia is a future employer for you, ask a lot of questions, read a lot of the blog posts, and figure out how Nvidia is positioned, and see if you see a role for you to be a volunteer for one of the missions that you feel passionate about. Then we absolutely welcome you.
Fantastic. Renee, this has been a fantastic podcast. Do you have any links for people to check out for yourself or for NVIDIA in general?
Nvidia.com is a great place to go. I love the Nvidia AI podcast. It's fantastic. We wrote so many different blog posts that you will love. And for me, I can be found on LinkedIn. I love to read. I write my year-end summary of the books that I like to read a lot. If you are a book reader, feel free to check out some of those. I'm visible. Just search me and you'll find it. And I look forward to connect with many of you guys.
Okay.